Isaac Newton. You hear that name and you immediately think of the dawn of modern science, right? The apple, gravity, a universe that runs like a perfect, predictable clock. We really think we know the guy. But the man who built the very foundations of our scientific age was also driven by these incredible passions he kept almost completely secret. Today, we're going to dive into that hidden world. So, who was the real Isaac Newton? Was he just this ultimate rational genius who saw the cosmos with perfect clarity? Or was he something else? Something way more complex? A secret alchemist hunting for the Philosopher's Stone? And a religious heretic whose beliefs could have absolutely destroyed him? In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers on one of history's most fascinating and misunderstood minds. First, let's start with the legend. This is the Newton we all learn about in school. You know, the father of the Enlightenment, the man who supposedly banished all that magic and superstition with the pure, cold light of reason. The guy who, almost single-handedly, figured out the blueprint of the entire universe. I mean, just listen to this famous epitaph from the poet Alexander Pope. It really shows you how people saw him even back then. They didn't just see a scientist. They saw a figure of almost divine revelation. It's an incredible tribute, and it just captures the massive scale of his impact.
And you know what? This reputation wasn't unearned. Not by a long shot. He really was a scientific giant who completely rewrote our understanding of the natural world with just a series of monumental, world-changing achievements.
Just look at this list. It's kind of insane. Any one of these would make a scientist's career for life. His book, The Principia Mathematica, is easily one of the most important scientific works ever published. He gave us universal gravitation, the laws of motion. He independently invented calculus, totally revolutionized optics, and built the first working reflecting telescope. It's just a staggering legacy.
So all this work comes together to create this field we now call classical mechanics. And for more than 200 years, Newton's laws were it. They were the definitive framework for physics, connecting everything from the heavens to the earth under one single mathematical system. It was a complete revolution in how we think.
But here's where our story takes a really interesting turn. Is this perfectly rational, clockwork view of the universe the whole story of Isaac Newton's mind? Well, the answer, which was hidden away in his private papers for centuries, is a resounding no, not even close. Because right alongside the public scientist, there was a secret scholar, a man that some people have called the last magician. He was absolutely consumed by subjects he knew he could never, ever reveal to the world. And the sheer scale of this hidden work is just astonishing. We know from his unpublished papers that he wrote roughly 1 million words on alchemy. 1 million words. That's actually more than he wrote on physics. He was poring over these ancient texts, running secret experiments, all trying to transmute metals and find the legendary Philosopher's Stone. The famous economist John Maynard Keynes, who ended up buying a lot of Newton's alchemical papers at an auction, he just captured this perfectly. He said Newton wasn't the first modern scientist, but that he was the last of the magicians, a mind that was still looking at the world with the same kind of mystical curiosity as the ancients. You can really see this deep split in his life right here. The public Newton, he was the respected president of the Royal Society, a master of logic and physics. But the private Newton, he was an alchemist, a student of biblical prophecy, and get this, a secret heretic. And his religious beliefs were incredibly radical for his day. He secretly rejected the doctrine of the Trinity. He saw it as a corruption of the original scriptures, basically a form of idolatry, which to him was the ultimate sin. If this view had ever become public, it would have been the end. His career, his reputation, all of it shattered. He had to keep it a secret his entire life.
So we've got the scientist and the alchemist. But then there's a third act to his life. This is where he pivots from all that abstract theory to the very practical, very messy world of power and politics, becoming the master of the mint.
Yeah, after publishing the Principia, he doesn't just retreat into a quiet academic life. No way. He moves to London, takes a job at the Royal Mint, eventually becomes its master, gets elected president of the Royal Society, and is even knighted by the Queen. The quiet, secluded academic had become this major public figure. And he was no paper pusher. Newton attacked the problem of counterfeiting with the exact same intensity he used on physics.
He went undercover in London's underworld to gather evidence, he personally cross-examined suspects, and he successfully prosecuted dozens of criminals. He was, for all intents and purposes, a brilliant detective, applying that scary intellect of his to law and order. Okay, so how do we reconcile all these different versions of Newton? The scientist, the magician, the public servant. Were they just total contradictions? Or were they all somehow part of a single unified project? Well, the key to understanding him, the thing that unlocks the whole puzzle, is that for Newton, these things weren't separate. He saw the entire universe as God's creation, a complex coded system. And this really matters, because it changes how we see the whole scientific revolution. It wasn't some clean break from the past. For its greatest pioneer, physics was one way to read God's mind, and alchemy and theology were others. It was all one big search. And you don't have to take my word for it. He basically said so himself. In a letter, he explained that while he was writing his masterpiece, the Principia, he was hoping its principles would lead thoughtful people for the belief of a deity. His science was never meant to erase God. It was meant to reveal his incredible design. And maybe this famous quote is the one that sums him up best. Despite everything, all his world-changing discoveries, he still saw himself as just a kid on the beach, finding a few interesting shells, while this great ocean of truth was still completely unknown, right out there in front of him. I think both the scientist and the mystic in him were humbled by the sheer scale of that mystery. And this leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. If a figure as foundational to our world as Isaac Newton had such a complex and hidden inner life, it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other great figures from history have these secret sides that we're only now starting to uncover? What other great oceans of truth are just waiting to be found? Not out there in the universe, but in the hidden lives of the very people who first tried to map it.